Welcome back to our discussion of Era 7 in the AP History curriculum. Today, we focus on the domestic impacts of World War I. While much attention often goes to battles and diplomacy, the changes on the home front were transformative. These changes not only shaped the war effort, but also had lasting impacts on American society and its economy. Let's dive into these pivotal moments. So first of all, wartime production. During World War I, the United States became an industrial powerhouse. Between 1914 and 1917, industrial production increased by 32%. This was before the U.S. had even officially entered the war. By 1918, American factories were producing staggering amount of military supplies, including 35 million rifles, 21,000 airplane engines, and over 600 million pounds of explosives. These efforts not only supported the U.S. military, but also bolstered the Allied war effort, particularly for Britain and France. Railroads, a crucial part of the supply chain, were nationalized to ensure the efficient movement of goods and troops. This centralization allowed for better coordination and ensured that resources reached their destinations on time. Railroads were also used to transport raw materials efficiently, reducing bottlenecks in the production process. To support the war, the U.S. government implemented sweeping measures to manage food and fuel. The Food Administration, under Herbert Hoover, encouraged Americans to conserve food through initiatives like Meatless Tuesdays and Wheatless Wednesdays. Citizens were also urged to plant victory gardens to supplement their diets with homegrown vegetables. By the war's end, about 25% of all U.S. food production was being sent overseas to support the Allies. Restaurants and bakeries were also encouraged to use alternative grains, such as barley or rye, to save wheat for soldiers. The Fuel Administration regulated coal production and prices. Americans were asked to conserve energy with heatless Mondays and lightless nights. These measures ensured that essential resources were directed toward the war effort. The administration also permitted the use of daylight savings to reduce energy consumption, a practice that remains in use today. The Great Migration was a significant demographic shift during this period. Between 1915 and 1930, approximately 1.6 million African Americans moved from the Royal South to northern and western cities. They sought to escape the oppressive conditions of the South, including segregation, racial violence, and limited economic opportunities. Push factors like the boll weevil's destruction of cotton crops and pull factors like industrial job opportunities in cities like Chicago and Detroit drove this migration. Despite finding better economic opportunities in the North, African Americans often faced discrimination and segregation in their new homes. Housing was often restricted to overcrowded and poorly maintained neighborhoods, and employment opportunities were frequently limited to low-paying jobs. Nonetheless, this migration laid the groundwork for significant cultural and political shifts in the 20th century, including the Harlem Renaissance and the Civil Rights Movement. World War I created new opportunities for women in the workforce. With millions of men serving overseas, women stepped into roles in heavy industry, munitions factories, and even police work. Over 30,000 women served in the military, primarily as nurses, but some took on clerical roles in the Army Signal Corps. This marked a significant shift in gender roles, though it was largely temporary. After the war, many women were pushed out of these jobs to make way for returning soldiers. Additionally, this period saw the growing momentum of the women's suffrage movement. Women's contribution to the war effort bolstered arguments for granting them the right to vote, which was achieved with the passage of the 19th Amendment in 1920. The U.S. government launched a massive propaganda campaign to rally public support for the war. The Committee on Public Information, led by George Creel, promoted patriotism and painted the U.S. as the defender of Western civilization. The Espionage and Sedition Acts restricted free speech and targeted those who opposed the war. More than 2,000 people were prosecuted under these laws, including socialist leader Eugene V. Debs. The post-war period saw the Red Scare, driven by fears of communism following the Russian Revolution. Attorney General A. Mitchell Palmer led raids that resulted in the arrest of thousands and the deportation of over 500 individuals. The raids often disregarded due process, leading to criticism from civil liberties groups in the eventual founding of the American Civil Liberties Union. During this period, European immigration continued to shape American demographics, with many immigrants coming from Southern and Eastern Europe seeking economic opportunities and escaping political instability. These groups faced challenges, including nativism and restrictive immigration policies. Meanwhile, Pacific immigration, primarily from China and Japan, also played a significant role, though it was met with significant resistance, leading to exclusionary policies like the Chinese Exclusion Act and the Gentleman's Agreement with Japan. These dynamics reflected broader tensions over cultural integration, labor competition, and the evolving national identity in the United States. Okay, so nativism. So during and after the war, nativist sentiments grew, leading to restrictive immigration policies. So you had the Emergency Quota Act and the National Origins Act, and they established quotas that severely limited immigration from Southern and Eastern Europe and Asia. These policies reflected growing xenophobia and fears of radicalism. Groups like the Ku Klux Klan also gained influence during this period, promoting anti-immigrant, anti-Catholic, and anti-Semitic ideologies. Additionally, public attitudes towards immigration were influenced by economic concerns as returning soldiers competed for jobs and housing. The legislation set the stage for decades of restrictive immigration policies that shaped the demographic makeup of the United States. So, World War I transformed the U.S. home front in profound ways. The war effort spurred economic growth, reshaped migration patterns, and expanded opportunities for women and minorities, although it was only temporary in that case. However, it also exposed deep divisions in American society, from racial discrimination to nativist fears. These changes set the stage for the tumultuous years that followed.